Recording. Hi and welcome. This is Pam from Around the Table Yarns. And today for Project Monday, we are going to start The Lost in Time Shawl by Johanna Lindahl. She goes by, her website is Mijo, M-I-J-O crochet. I'm assuming it's Mijo. That's how I want to pronounce it. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and it is a very detailed pattern. I'm going to actually start by sharing the pattern with you and some of the things that it contains. So let me share my screen let's go to Safari. I'll go here. So if you start in, let's see, you start in, let me find Ravelry going here. I had it queued up and then all right. So when you start in Ravelry, you can click, it'll take you right to her website. The Lost in Time Shawl. And if you scroll down, she is Danish is her, I think, her first language. So she's got English and Danish here, the describing and giving a little introduction to it. But if you scroll down and keep going, there's beautiful pictures in different colors. And the pattern, which I love that apparently in Dutch, it's monster, which I think is hilarious because sometimes a pattern does feel like a monster. The very first one is the English version in US terms. So you don't have to worry about it being in UK terms. It's already translated. And when you click on that, it takes you right to a PDF of the pattern that you can print off, or if you use Knit Companion, you can download it into Knit Companion. She has on the first page here, she's got the abbreviations of the stitches we'll be using: chain and slip stitch, single and double, and then a couple that may or may not be new to you: front post double crochet, back post double crochet, a picot with a 2 chain, and a popcorn stitch. She does not give explanations on the pattern, but if you click here, it takes you to her stitch guides, which you can then click on to English and takes you to another PDF. And you can print this off or just refer to it. So I think the only one we're going to get to tonight, no, is the popcorn stitch. But all of her stitch guides have not only written directions, but illustrated pictures. An excellent stitch guide for any project. So you could download this. It's like 15 pages, I think, but it's a great resource to have. So let me go back. If you go back to, let's see, this one here. The pattern, if you go all the way down past all of the different translations of the pattern, there's one more document in here that I actually did not find until last night, right before I did the class this morning. There is a stitch count guide for all of the repeats of the pattern that somebody came up with, and then the designer approved, and she posted on her website. It's 3 pages. Highly recommend you download and print this out, because what it tells you is, here's what row of the pattern you're on, and here's how many stitches you should have on each side. It's a triangle, so each side is going to be symmetrical. So in this case, for row 1, there should be 5, and then it tells you in the next what kind of stitch, double crochets per side. And then after you do, which is listed in the pattern, but once you start the repeats, it doesn't give the repeat count. So once you start doing repeats, it gives you the total number of stitches you should have Very handy because keeping a count of your stitches is one of the key things for this particular pattern. The stitches aren't hard, but making sure you have the right number of stitches will keep you on track and make sure the pattern looks right. So that's another resource in there that you can download and print. You could even add it to Knit Companion if you use that as well as a resource. She does the repeat with the count a total of 8 times. How many times you repeat the pattern is up to you as to what yarn you're using and how big you want it to be. So you can stop, and we'll go through that in the pattern anytime you want. But she went ahead and did the counts through 8 repeats. All right, so let me go back.
Glad you found that.
Yeah, me too.
I bypassed that. Yeah.
Because it didn't even occur to me. And then I was scrolling, needed to print the pattern from somebody and I kind of scrolled too fast. I'm like, hey, what is this? Like, that's handy. So here she has on the second page of the pattern, some pattern notes, which I always look for in a pattern. She also does not say on this pattern, on the actual printed pattern, what yarn she used or what hook she used. She has that on her website for what she did, because you can do it out of any yarn and you can really do it out of any gauge. She did it in a fingering weight, and she has it both in Katona, sheepjust Katona, which is what I'm using, as well as she's done it in a whirl, which changes colors by itself. As far as what hook size to use, I'll show you how I kind of figured out. She gave you her recommendation, but it should be a fabric that you like. I've got somebody in the class who's doing it in a DK weight yarn because she had extra of it and she likes it. And she's not going to do as many repeats because it's going to be bigger sooner. All of that is great. So the pattern is really just for your stitches and your rows. As far as gauge and those kinds of things, you kind of have to figure out ahead of time. But the pattern notes here, there's 4 little bullet points. You are going to turn your work after each row, which means it's not worked in the round like a granny would be. You are flipping it back and forth row by row. If a row starts with a chain 3, it does count as a double crochet. If a row starts with a chain 1, it does not count as a stitch, which is important to know. And I will point that out as we go through some of the rows. This pattern has popcorn stitches, which look like little bobbles. You don't have to do the popcorns because it's really the only stitch in here that adds a really defined texture. If you want a smoother texture, you can eliminate the popcorns and just make double crochets instead. And I'll point that out as we get to it. So those were her notes. And I will share with you, let's see. Let me pull up my photos because somebody posted, happened to be just last night. Somebody posted this version of it. So this was done in one of the whirls. So it changes colors by itself. And she eliminated the popcorn stitch. So it's a very smooth kind of can you see that okay?
No, it's not showing.
No, you're not sharing that one.
Hold on. Let me stop sharing and let's try that again. Let me share. Can you see it there?
Yes, thank you.
Good. So this one's done in a whirl. So she didn't have to change colors. It did it by itself. And she eliminated the popcorn stitch. And right here, she just added double crochets instead. And it just gives it kind of a more delicate look, and first of all, I thought that whirl was beautiful. And it's a beautiful photograph, but just as another option. There are lots of versions on Ravelry if you're still like trying to decide which yarn you want to use, to give you some inspiration. Okay, so let me stop that so I can go to the camera. I actually was particularly inspired by and I think that's what got my attention the first time I saw it on Ravelry. This is the main picture, and it's this colorway that really got me. I knew it was done. She said she had done it out of scraps of Katona yarn. And so I went through our wall of Katona and I picked out what I thought were similar ones, not realizing that actually on the website, she has the exact colors and what row she used what color on. So that's there as well. So if you
That's
love
a very
this,
LaRue colorway.
it's very, let me
Very LaRue.
let me pull it up so I can show you. I think it was
Yeah, I picked out colors very similar to what she used in that photo that you're showing,
yeah.
but I ordered the wool stock light fingering
Oh,
weight.
that'll be lovely. Yes.
Yeah.
That'll be lovely. So let me share this with you here. So this is again, this was after I found the stitch
Yeah, I
count.
I didn't see that down there either.
I
I
know,
think she
apparently
just
there's
snuck those in.
a load of information. And then by the way, I did scroll all the way to the bottom to see. So here are the exact colors that she used and how much of each one she used, which I think is hilarious. And then she wrote for each row what color she used. Now, this is actually very helpful if you are going to change colors, to know when she changed colors. Whatever colors you use, I really like the way because some of these back post and front post stitches pull colors forward and back. I liked knowing when she changed colors. So this could be really helpful when she stayed on one color and when she changed. So that's another resource for you. Okay, let's go back to pattern. Pull up the actual pattern again.
Actually, I think I did see that because it was the sheepish
Yes.
yarn.
Yeah.
And that's how I found you.
Oh, perfect.
That's how I found your store.
Yes.
Was through trying to
Oh,
look for
perfect.
that yarn. But then I saw the wool stock and I liked it better.
Perfect. So I like I said before when I was making the juniper cowl, I get hot. So to have a wool shawl is probably not something I'm really going to wear. So it just made sense. All right, I'm going to switch over to the document camera. Now, first I want to make sure I covered everything in the beginning. Okay, gauge. I hear your tail. I do, I hear it. He's just looking up at me like, are we going to do something? All right, okay, so zoom in. Okay. So I actually have my little gauge swatch I did here. She recommended a 4mm hook, which is a G, if you were using the Katona. And I have often found when I'm crocheting that depending on what I'm doing, that I often use a different size hook. So I did do really bright. There we go. I did a little swatch. So I started with a 5mm hook and really thought that was too loose. And then I did a 4mm, which I kind of liked. And I went down to a 3.5 and I thought it was a little too tight, just in double crochets. So I went ahead and I stuck with the 4mm. And here's my little beginning swatch of it. I quite like how that looks. It's got nice, drape to it.
Yeah.
I think it will, I think it will block out, and it's still got some stretch to it. It's not too tight. It's not too loose. I wanted to make sure on some of these open stitches that it wasn't going to be floppy, and it's not floppy. So pick a hook that you're comfortable with. And I would say just doing double crochets is a good test for this particular pattern. None of the other stitches are particularly tight or particularly loose. So, and this is what I had started before I saw her colors. So I'm going to do one following her colors and just use this as like a little swatch to practice with. But yeah, I quite like it. Now, if you're changing colors, you're gonna notice you have ends. You're gonna have a lot of ends. Although we will add a border. You can work over your ends because it does kind of have a right side and a wrong side. I chose not to work over my ends because I was too busy focusing on my stitch count. I might, going forward, try to work over the ends, which means as I start the next row, I would take the tail and kind of lay it across the stitches and crochet over them to kind of bury part of it, and then I can snip them. These I'm just going to maybe wait till I do the border and then weave them into the border. And we'll have to see. I haven't quite gotten that far yet, but we have 3 sessions to figure out how we're going to do our ends. So know that that's a thing about ends. I also, and I'll point this out as we go, because you turn your row, every row is going to start on the right, and then when you turn it over and do the next row, it starts on the right and ends on the left. So every other row ends on the left. If you feel like you're going to get lost in the pattern, or if you're, I just wasn't sure where it was going to go. So I decided to put a stitch marker at the end of every other row. And this first one is the end of, what's it, pink one? That's the end of row. Hold on. There we go. So as I was following, as I finished row 2, I wrote down what color marker I put so that if I should have to rip it back, I would know as I pulled out rows, I would know what row I was pulling out. So I wasn't sure if I was going to need that, but a couple people in class this morning who are newer to crochet and recognizing these stitches thought that would be really helpful. This is not something that's required, but it just might be something that could be helpful. Maybe as you get into a stitch where you're not sure, you could just do it on rows that you're not sure about and mark it on your patterns. And I just changed my color of stitch marker so I would know. I think once I get through one set of the repeats and I know my stitch count is right, I could take all of these out, and then maybe I could start over on the ones where I would need to double check. If you're going to put it down in the middle of something and walk away for it from any length of time, this might be helpful to know where you left off. So just another tip that you might be able to use. All right, so let's get into the pattern. Okay. I'm just gonna, please holler if you've got a question at any time. I'm gonna be, if the brightness on this gets really fussy. So I'm gonna have the pattern off to the side and I'll be reading the count or reading the directions and doing it. If you need me to clarify anything, please stop and let me know. And then once we get a little further along, I'll start out by doing both sides so that you can see how to keep track, but then I may only do one side of it because they are the same on both sides, just so that you can get the idea. Particularly next month when our rows are much longer, for you to sit here and watch me go all the way across 2 sides of a row would be painful to say the least. But to know where you're supposed to start and end and where your stitches are supposed to land is the important part. Okay, so we're going to start. She has you starting with a chain 4 that you then, I don't know how to turn that on, that you turn into a ring. I prefer to make a magic ring, which is what I did to begin with. So I'm going to start.
Did you find, I sometimes find that the magic ring makes things a little too tight. Did you run into that problem?
I did it on this one and I did not have that problem. I did this morning, let me pull it out in class. I did a much bigger swatch on super chunky yarn. And then I realized that this camera, I didn't really need it. And I did it on Magic Ring. And I do think it's distorted. It is too tight. I think on the thicker yarns, it does. The thinner yarn, I didn't have a problem. You're going to have a center, these center chain twos that will happen on every row. And it almost lines up, it does line up with your Magic Ring. So if it doesn't tighten all the way, it's fine, which is one of the things I don't necessarily love about a regular ring. But because there's these holes that line up, I don't mind having a regular ring in this one. So it's totally preference at this point, whatever works for you. But I did promise somebody this morning I would demonstrate the Magic Ring again. And there are a lot of ways to do it. But this was the way that my hands remember. Getting the exposure right here is tricky. Okay. So I take my tail of my yarn and I lay it across these 3 fingers. And I wrap it around and I crisscross it and hold that, the center of the X, the crisscross, with my thumb. And then I turn my hand over. And I have parallel lines on this side and crisscrossy lines on this side. So I'm going to look at this side. There we go. All right. Then I'm going to go underneath the first one, underneath the first strand. I'm going to grab the second strand with my hook and twist it. Then I'm going to go over the first strand again and grab the second a second time. And at this point, I can very carefully slide my hand out and pull that through to one loop. And what I've got is a ring that will tighten if I pull the tail, and then my working yarn. Let's tighten this up a little bit. So either that or do a chain 4, slip stitch into the first chain to form a ring, and you're good to go. All right, row 1 starts with a chain 3. Zoom in just a bit. And from our pattern notes, we know that this chain 3 counts as a double crochet. Okay, so there's my chain 3. Now I'm going to do, we've got brackets. It says 4 double crochets, and she words it, and I think it's a translation thing. She says 2 chains, which means chain 2, and then 5 double crochets into the chain ring. So let's do 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Chain 2, and 5 more double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So I've mentioned that this is a symmetrical pattern. Whatever happens on one side of the chain 2 is going to happen on the other side of the chain 2. So since that chain 3 counts as a double crochet, I'm going to count it as a double. So there's 1 double, 2, 3, 4, 5, chain 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got I've got equal amounts on both sides. So now I can tighten up my ring. And it's going to pull it into a little arrowhead shape. So that's the beginning of our shawl. If I was going to be changing colors, I would do it here, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to change colors, I think, until row 5, I believe. Yeah, row 5 I'll change. Okay. But we are going to turn. So she says, and I wrote this on my pattern. Let me darken it. I did write, if you're newer, and I'm mostly saying this for people who might be watching this later. If you're new and you're not used to working rows back and forth like this, make yourself a note that you're supposed to turn it over. And I guarantee you by the time you're about 6 or 7 rows in, you will remember that you've got to turn it over. She gives you a little stitch count. So at the end of row 1, which I just finished, I should have 5 double crochets on each side. At the end of this next row, I should have 9 double crochets on each side. And that will be divided by the chain 2 space. Okay, so row 2 is going to start with a chain 3. It is up to you whether you chain first and then turn, or turn and then chain. Everybody's got a preference. I prefer to chain and then turn. 1, 2, 3, and then I turn it over. That is a total preference thing. You can do it either way. That's what works for me. It ends up putting my yarn where I want it. And the twist from the turn is way down here, which is never a part of the stitch I need. I'm going to need the top of this chain 3, and it's ready to go. All right, row 2, chain 3, and I do 2 double crochets in the first double crochet. So the first double crochet is right beneath the chain 3. It's the very first stitch right there. I'm going to put 2 double crochets in them. 1, 2. And then I'm going to do 1 double crochet in every double crochet up to the chain 2 space. When you are turning your work back and forth, and it's not so easy to see on a single, but any of the taller stitches, when you look at the post of the stitch, the top of that stitch is always going to be the opening just to the left of the post of the stitch. If you're doing a granny square and you're always staying on the right side on top, the top of the stitch is always to the right. But if you're turning it over back and forth, it's always going to be to the left. So here's the 2 I put in that first stitch, and now I'm going to put, and I'll show you why that's important. I need to put 1 in every double up to the chain 2 space. Here's the next one. Okay, so here's my chain 2 space, but I still have 1 more double. The top, pull up that loop so I don't lose it. The top of this double is actually kind of leans into the chain 2 space. So I'm going to put 1 more. I'm going to go into the stitch, not the chain space. And then when I get to the chain 2 space, I have to make another corner space, which is essentially what this is. So I'm going to be making 2 doubles, a chain 2, and 2 doubles. The 2 doubles I start with count for my stitch count for this side. So I'm going to make the 2 doubles. I'm not going to make the chain 2 yet. And I'm going to do a quick stitch count to see if I'm on track. It says I should have 9 on this side. So if I start with the chain 3 that I made, that's 1. And then I put 2 in the first stitch. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I am on track. Then I chain 2 and put 2 more doubles, and those are going to be the first 2 doubles for my second side count. And then she says 1 double in every double, and I will do 3 double crochets in the top of the chain 3 from the previous row, right down there. So again, the top of my double is to the left. So I'm going to count as I go. I did 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, and I need to put, so that's the top of the last actual double, and now I need to put 3 doubles into the top of the third chain. So let's go. And once you get that first one in, it'll open it up. You can put the rest in. There you go. 1. So it was 6, that's 7. And 8. And 9. So there's the end. And I would say in the beginning here, count this side up, and so you don't have to rip back. Don't wait till you complete the whole row. Count till you get to the chain 2 space, and remembering that whatever you're doing, and it changes every row, whatever you're doing into the previous chain 2 space, either singles or doubles or whatever it is, counts towards the stitch count for the side. So the chain 2 space is your divider. Everything to the right is one side, everything to the left is the other side, and those should be equal numbers. All right, that's row 2. Row 3, bind off some I'm not pulling. I'm going to go from 9 double crochets on each side to 13. It's going to start with a chain 3. So I know that's going to count as a double crochet. So I'm going to chain 3 before I turn, because that's my preference, and then turn. 2 double crochets in the first double. So we're essentially doing the same thing, just getting this is kind of like our setup rows. These rows are not repeated. The repeat rows start on row 15. So these are really our setup rows, getting us going. 1 double in every double crochet up to the chain 2 space. So I'm going to count as I go and hope I get 13. Got 3 so far. 4. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and into my chain 2 space, I put 2, 12, and 13. So I've got my 13 for this side. Chain 2 for my new center. 2 more. And work my way back down. You can see how boring this is going to get watching me work both sides. So I'm going to stop that soon. But that's how and as the rows get longer, you often don't know you've made a mistake until you try to do the next row. So double checking your stitch count on the side before you start the second side, I highly recommend. looks like I just have to do the 3 at the end. So let's just double check. What did I actually do? Oh, see, I already made a mistake. I did not put 2 in my center. So I'm probably going to be 1 stitch short. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yep, I'm 1 stitch short. So they get for talking. But I would much rather find out about that now, as opposed to starting a new row and then having to take that out to fix this row. And you absolutely can fudge it. If you're comfortable fudging it, fudge it away. There's no
No,
judgment.
I'll rip it out if I'm crocheting. If I'm knitting, I will probably fudge it.
Yes, I totally agree. And we've only got, 13 stitches. If I'm on the repeat where there's, maybe 78 stitches, it is unlikely I am going to rip it out. If there's a way to fudge it, I am probably going to fudge it. But understanding how her counts work, and how comfortable you are recognizing and counting your stitches, I mean, that's can really vary from person to person. So just want to give the options. So I'm putting 3 in the top of that chain 3 from the row below. All right. So that's row 3. Row 4. Did you take my row 4? All right, row 4, we're going to add some chain spaces. This row 4 starts with a chain 4. 2, 3, 4. So since you said in the pattern notes that a double crochet, a chain 3 counts as a double crochet, you can assume, and I can verify, that a chain 4 is going to count as a double crochet plus a chain 1. And in this case, it's going to be a chain 1 space. So chain 4 and turn. And then I'm going to do 1 double crochet into the first double crochet from the row below. So essentially here I have a double crochet plus a chain 1 and then another double crochet. Now my repeat is chain 1, skip a double crochet, and put a double crochet in the next. So I'm going to chain 1, skip a double, put a double in the next. And that's my repeat all the way to the last double crochet on this side. And what I am hoping for is 9 double crochets and 8 chain 1 spaces. So far I have 1, 2, 3, chain 1 and skip. That's 4, chain 1 and skip. That's 5, chain 1 and skip. That's 6, chain 1 and skip. And that's 7, chain 1 and skip. That's 8. So after I get to the last double crochet, then I do chain 1 and 1 double in the chain 2 space. So that's 9. So let me make sure I've got 8 chain 1 spaces. So here's 1 chain 1 space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that side's good. Chain 2. 1 double. And then I'm going to, let's see, chain 1, 1 double in the next. And then my repeat is to chain 1 and skip. So far I have 1, 2, and 3. There's 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. Yep. Skip one. And then it says, let's see, to the third last double crochet. So this is the third last. I have 2 more left. Then I'm going to chain 1, skip this last one, and I'm going to put a double, a chain 1, and a double in the third chain from the previous row. So I'm just, before I do that, I'm just going to do a quick count and make sure that puts me on track. Make sure I didn't screw anything else up. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I'll put 2 more here, 8 and 9. And that's what I'm supposed to have. Perfect. So skip this last double, go to the top of the chain and do a double, which really mimics what happened on the other side, a chain 1 and a double. So you end up with the same thing. This one started with a chain 4, which is a double and a chain 1, and it ends up with a double, a chain 1, and a double in the last stitch. But it gives you the same stitch count on both sides. So at this point, it should start to not be quite so Star Trek symbol-y. It should start to straighten out here a little bit and become more triangular shape. I found by about this row is when that stopped happening, because we got some looser stitches. So it gave it a little bit of give. All right, so now I'm going to change colors. I got to row 5, and I'm going to change to this pretty gold. And here's how I like to change colors. I'm actually going to take this out. I'm going to slip this back on to 2 loops. I always do, I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to do the last yarn over of the last stitch with my new color. So I was doing a double, 1 more double crochet, and I got down to my last 2 loops. I'm going to do the last yarn over with my new color and pull it through. That keeps the stitch, it's hard to tell because these colors are so close. It keeps the stitch in the same color, and the loop coming out of the stitch is changed to the new color. All right, so now I'm on, oops, then I just ripped it out. Let's do that 1 more time. Some people like to finish the stitch and then do their chain in a new color, but it does give a little bit of a jog of color. Anytime I'm changing colors, I always do the last stitch, the last yarn over of the last stitch in my new color. Row 5 is a chain 1, which tells me it is not going to be counted as a stitch. Okay, I'm going to turn, and usually the first stitch or so, got my 2 ends. I just kind of tighten them up and kind of hold on to them to keep the tension. So this row is 1 single in the first double. So let's do that first. If you are somebody who has a hard time recognizing where stitches end, you could put, because we know the chain 1 does not count as a stitch. We know that when we come back across this row, our last stitch is going to be going into this single crochet. You could mark the top of this stitch so that you're not accidentally going into the chain stitch down the side. Although with the stitch counts, I think it's less likely that happens. But that's just a little tip if you have a hard time recognizing where to stop, especially on some of these shorter stitches. All right, the repeat is to chain 1, single in the next chain one space, all the way across to the last chain one space. So chain one, single in every chain one space, single, chain one, and I am hoping here for 10 single crochets and trying not to do double crochets. Chain one. That's one of the hardest things, is to get out of that mindset of doing a yarn over first. Chain one, single, chain one, single, chain one. I like going into chain spaces, it goes so much faster. So here's my chain two space. So the pattern says to stop into the chain one space. I'm gonna do a quick count. I'm hoping for a total of 10 singles, and I will be putting one single here. So I could count one here. I'll have one here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I'm good on this side. Single, chain two, single, and I could count my chain one spaces as well. We've got, I should have 9 chain one spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I did my center space, single and a chain two. And then I will chain one, and I'll do a single in the next chain one space, which is right here, and work my way down. So much faster going into spaces. Okay. And this had been all the way down to the last chain one space, and we'll do a chain one and one single in the third chain from the beginning. So I want to say that this was a chain 4. So that includes a chain one space. So I do need to put one more in there. I'm going to do a quick count before I put my last single in. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I do chain one and one single in the third chain. I try to catch 2 loops when I go into the third chain if I can. And there's the next one. And then, since I am going to be following, and this is going to be my for real one now, she does change back. The ginger gold color. Take out my last stitch. Row 6 starts with the chain 3. Pull it through. Color change. Chain 1, 2, 3, which I know will be a double. And I'm going to do 1 double crochet in the first single, which is right here, right below the chain 3. Whoops. Yes, 1 double. And then my repeat is chain 1, 1 double in the next chain 1 space, all the way to the last chain 1 space. So the single chain 1 spaces are a little harder to find. The first one, if I'm not mistaken, is actually going to be right here. And the way I can tell, if I turn it back over, And I looked to see how my row ended on row 5. It ended with, I did a single here, and then I did a chain 1, and then I did a single. So this is a chain 1 right here as well. So I went into the single, and now I need to go into the chain 1 space and do double, chain 1, chain 1. Cool. So looking back at your previous row, how it ended, to find those chain 1 spaces, because they're not always obvious. Particularly once you get to the longer rows, you're not going to want to take it back. I'm getting close. I just want to make sure I'm on track. I am hoping for 13 double crochets here. So here's my chain 3. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I will put one here, 10, one here, 11, and there are 2 into the chain 2 space. So that gives me the 13. So I hope this helps with your thinking about how to attack each row to keep it straight. And then chain 2. I'll work my way back down. Put 2 doubles here. 1, 2, and then my repeat back is to chain 1 and 1 double in each chain 1 space until I get to the last chain 1 space. Go ahead. Chain 1. Right, and I have, let's do my count. I think I have 1 more chain 1 space. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I have 1 more space, that'll be 11. And my last job is to put 2 double crochets in the single crochet, which I have marked there. So I have 1 more chain 1 space right there. Chain 1, and I will put 2 doubles where I have marked. So sometimes those little marks can be helpful. Putting those little stitch markers in. 1 and 2. Definitely starting to straighten out now. That was row 6. We are cruising along. Let's see here. Every time I snip, all I can think is breathing in. And switch back. These setup rows are a little tedious, but I want us to get to the front post and the popcorn stitches. All right, so row 7 is a chain 1, which tells me it's not going to count as a stitch. Chain 1 and turn, 2 singles in the first double. So let's find my first double is right there. 2 singles. And 1, 1, 2. So I'm going to go ahead and slide a marker in there. That's just become my habit. I teach a lot of beginning crochet. So marking my first stitch has kind of just become part of my habit, particularly on a pattern, even though I've been doing this since I was 8 years old. On a new pattern, if I'm not sure, I just find it so much easier than having to guess. All right, because I often do this when I'm tired. I don't know about you. All right, 2 singles in the first. My repeat in the parentheses is to chain 1, 1 single, the next chain 1 space all the way across. All right, so chain 1 and single. I'm hoping for 14 singles. So far I have 2. That's 3. That's 4. That's 5. 6. 7. 8. 9, 10. 11. 12. That was my last chain 1 space. So I've got 12. It says, pattern says to the last chain 1 space on this side, chain 1, skip 1 double and single in the next double. So I'll skip this double. I'll single in this double. So that was 13. Now I've lost count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then in my center, 14. 1 single, chain 2, 1 single. Also make sure that and if you're doing your stitch counting, it should be fine, but your chain 2 should all be lining up nice and neat. Every once in a while, give that a check, just to make sure, because it's going to be the center. You will be able to notice if you're off, if you're not making your chain 2 space in a previous chain 2 space. That will definitely be noticeable, and that's hard to fudge. And then my repeat down the next side is to, let's see, I did a single in the next chain 2 space. I'm going to do a single in the next double crochet, which the top of it is right there to the left. And then my repeat is chain 1, single into the space. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right. I'm going to do chain 1 and 2 singles into the 3rd chain of the beginning of the previous row. So I'm skipping this last double, just like we skipped the last double up here. I'm going to skip this last one and do 2 singles, do a chain 1 first and then 2 singles, which is 13 and 14. 13 and 14. And there's row 7. One of the things I do like how she did this pattern and the layout of color is, like I don't get, she kind of fades, I don't want to say fades, but she groups the colors. So I'm going back and forth between this orange and this ginger color. And then I'll get into the purples, but I don't get into my grays and blues and greens until a little bit further down, which I really like. So if you're switching colors, using that little thing that we found, because I was just kind of making it up on this one. It's like, oh, I'll do this one next. I'll do this one next. But I do like, I was going to save the darker colors, but I do like how she did that, how it kind of fades into the other colors. It gives it a nice balance, I think. All right, that was my little side note. Hi, Kim. We're finishing up.
No, we still have until 7:30. I just missed you guys. I meant to be here on time.
Oh, good. Well, you can just listen.
Yeah, we don't start until 7:30 tonight.
Okay, good.
Take your time.
All right. All right, so that was, let me get back to the right row here. Now we're on to row 8. So I'm gonna go back to my 2 loops. Row 8 starts with a chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can guess that that's going to be a double and a chain 1. If these ends start to bother you, there are a couple of mindsets in this world about ends. Some people do not like knotting anything, and some people don't have a problem. Megan, who works at our shop and teaches a lot of our beginning classes, she hears the word knot and she freaks out. I feel like crochet is a series of knots, and one more is not going to kill me if it keeps my stitches together. So I'm just going to put them together in a loose knot that I can always take out later if I don't like. But it keeps the tension nice on your stitches. Okay. But you have my permission to knot, by the way. All right, chain 4, which is going to count as a chain 1 and a double crochet. And I'm going to do a double crochet into the first single, which is right there. And then my repeat is chain 1, 1 double in the next chain 1 space. Again, that's going to be right. There's my 2 singles that I'm kind of, here's my first chain 1 space. So I've done 2, 3 doubles so far, and I'm hoping for 15. Mm-hmm. 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 6, 7, 8, 11, 13. All right, that was the last chain 1 space. And I'm going to chain 1, skip 1 single, 1 double in the next, which is right. So I'm skipping the top of this one. I'm going to go right in here. That's 14. And then in my center, chain 1 and just 1 more. There's my chain 2. That's my 15 doubles. And then chain 2. 1 more in the chain 2 space. Working back down. Put 1 double. Let's say I start with the chain 1 and then put 1 double in next single right here. And then I repeat this chain 1, 1 double all the way. 1, 2, 3, 7. 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13. I think that was my last chain one space. Chain one, put one double, a chain one, and one double. So that'll be 14 and 15 in the last single crochet, which I have marked here. So one, chain one, and one double. Finish up. Yeah. Good student. I have to change my color, row 9. We're almost about to do something exciting. 9 starts with a chain one and turn, a single in the first double, which is right there. Slide that marker back in because I just find that helpful. I don't have trouble finding the chain spaces anymore. That's what I used to have trouble finding. Now sometimes it's the single crochet sometimes. All right, so there's a single in the first double. My repeat is 2, chain one in the next space, which is right there. Chain, okay. Single, chain one, single. That's 1, 2, I've done 3. Mm. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13. I'm hoping for 16. I lost count because I said it out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There's my last chain one space. And then I do, let's see, chain one, and I do a single. That makes 16. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Perfect. Chain 2, single, and chain one single on the next chain space. Work our way back down. It's 2. One, Mhm. 11. 5, 13. 14. And we are going to do each the last chain one space, one single in chain one and one single in the third chain. I believe that's 16. It's just 13, 14, 15, and 16 is into that chain two. All right, row 10. Woohoo! We get to do something very exciting. Popcorn stitch. So this is where you have the option of either doing a popcorn stitch, or I'll show you what your other option is if you want to have it less textured. Row 10 starts with a chain 4. And 1, 2, 3, and 4. And turn. So that's going to be a double and a chain 1. I'm going to put one double into the first single, right below it. One double. So far I have a double and a chain 1 and a double. Now I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to put a popcorn in the next single crochet. So this, I'm going to just a little zoom in here. Remember how I said that the top of the stitch, when you're working back and forth, is always to the left. It's a little harder when you're doing a single to see. So my direction here is to do a double. I've chained 1, and I'm going to put a popcorn stitch into the next single crochet. So what we have here are singles and chain 1 spaces, single and chain 1 spaces. I think it's easiest. You can turn it to see your top of your stitches. I think it's easiest to aim for kind of the center of your double. And that, I'm sorry, the center of the single. And that puts you in the right, just about the right spot. If it's really hard to see, you could go for kind of the chain 1 space, because they're so close together. But I do think kind of just pushing right into the top of the two, right above the 2 legs of the single is your best bet to go. Now, her popcorn stitch is composed of 4 double crochets into the same stitch. Different patterns will have a different number of double crochets depending on the size of the popcorn bobble they want to make. So I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to put 4 double crochets into the same stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now to complete the popcorn, I'm going to pull my loop a little bit big. I'm going to take my hook out. I am going to go back to the beginning of the first double crochet that I made of these 4. And since I haven't turned it over, the top of that double crochet is slightly to the right of the post. I hope you can see that. You can also count back. Here's the top of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Slide your hook in from front to back. Then go back to the loop that you had slipped off and pull that loop through. And it brings those 4 stitches together into a little bobble shape. That's the popcorn. And then my repeat is to chain 1. And then put a double crochet into the next single. So it's going to alternate popcorn double, popcorn double. You could, if you don't want the texture, to do a chain one. And instead of doing a double in the next single, you could just continue to do doubles. If you didn't want to have the texture, and you could just have a row of doubles across. But I'm going to do the popcorn because I like a little texture. Again, I'm going to go in between kind of the two legs. I just think that's the easiest part to find the top of the single. So I've done a double and a chain one, 4 doubles in that space. 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to go up and down both sides on this one. 4. Release my hook from the loop. Go into the top of the first one from front to back. Hook your loop back on your hook and without dropping it. No. Well, no, I cut it off. Split yarn. Let's finish that one step. That's why I try to pull up a big loop. Front to back. Grab the loop. Pull the loop through and chain 1. And let's do it one more time. I'll do a double in the next. So you get this alternating. Chain 1. And then one more popcorn. 1. 2. 3. 4. Pull your loop, go back to the first double, insert from front to back, grab your loop, pull it through and chain 1. And you would continue on. The pattern has you doing that all the way to the last single on this side. So I'm going to pull over the other one that I made. I'm not going to go all the way across. So I did the popcorns in purple in this case. And the last popcorn goes into the last single on this side, which is in the chain 2 space. So you do a popcorn into the chain 2 space. Then you chain 1, and then you put 1 double, chain 2, 1 double, and you put a popcorn going down the other side in the next single, and you work your way down to the end. And you're going to follow your pattern of chain 1, a double in the next single, chain 1, a popcorn in the next, until you get to the second to last single. And then you're going to put, you'll chain 1 and you'll put a double, a chain 1, and a double into the last single. Okay, is that clear? I don't want to take the time because I do want to get to the back post stitches. All right. Then you're going to do, let's see, my next row. That's convenient. I'm going to stay in that color. I'm just going to go back to the other side now. So the next row is going to be another row of 1 double. You're going to start with a chain 4, and then you're going to do a chain 2, 1 double, a chain 2, and 1 double in the next stitch. So I'm going to put a couple of popcorn stitches over here. Actually, what I can do it on this side here. Let's do it. Move it across. Okay. So you're going to, I'm just going to show this row. So I want to show you the next part. So after you finish the popcorns, I switched to a new color and I chained 4, then I turned. So that's going to be a double and a chain 1 is what it's going to count as. And then I did a double, a chain 2, and a double in the next double crochet. So here's my double, chain 2, and double all coming out of that stitch. And I'm going to do that all the way down the side. So I'm doing that into each double crochet, skipping the popcorns. So a double, chain 2, and a double. Skip over to the next double crochet. So I'm skipping the popcorn all together. A double, a chain 2, and a double. Skipping the popcorn, and you're seeing the back of the popcorn there. So I'm just aiming for the tops of those double crochets from the previous row. A double, chain 2, double, all the way across. Makes that nice little open V all the way to the end. And we're going to, the last double crochet was right here. So there's my double, chain 2, double. Then I did a double, a chain 2, and a double in the chain 2 space. So that's my center, which is all lining up. And I do the same thing working my way back. Ending with, do a big finish here. So there's my, it wants me to go to the second to last double crochet. So here was my chain 3, that's my last. So I did my double, chain 2, and a double in the second to last. And then it wants me to chain 1 and put 1 double in the 3rd chain. And that's how I finish row 11. Row 12. All right. We're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to turn. I'm going to do 1 double in the first double crochet. So that's right here below. And now I'm going to do 8 double crochets in the chain 2 space. So where I had done the double, chain 2, and a double, that chain 2 space, I'm going to put 8 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Then I'm going to skip the next chain 2 space. So I'm going to skip this one here. And I'm going to go all the way over to this one. I'm going to do the same thing, 8 doubles. And you're going to do that all the way across. I'm just going to do a few here. And this, and I'm going to go to the other side. And what you're going to end up with is make sure you do the 8 because you do need to have the right number there. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I would continue across, skipping. I'll skip this chain 2 space and I'll go here. I'll skip this one and go here. I'll skip this one and go here. So you end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these 8 double crochet shells. Okay, because what you need to end up with is 5 groups of 8 double crochets per side. So I'm going to do I'm going to move to this side so I can turn it over. I'm just going to put 4 in this one. We're going to pretend it was 8. Skip this one and do 8 in the last one. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then this row finishes with 2 double crochets in the 3rd chain. So I'm going to skip the chain 1 because I had started with a chain 4. And I'm going to leave a little chain 1 space there and put 2 doubles in the end. Okay, the next row, I'm going to change color so that it shows up. Let's use a little bit. Okay, so now I'm moving on to row 13. And this involves a front post double crochet. I'm going to switch my color. A nice contrast here. And row 13 starts with a chain 3. One, 2, 3, and turn. So you notice our popcorns are facing the other side. So now you can really tell a right side from a wrong side of, of our, once we get the popcorns in. If you're going to do double crochets instead of popcorns, this is the row that's really going to define that. All right. She gives a little tip at the beginning of row 13. It says, make sure to make a front post double crochet in the 2nd double crochet before the 1st shell. So what she wants you to do is to finish that last row with 2 double crochets. And our 2nd one is this one right here. The 1st one is right underneath my chain. There's my 2nd one. To do let's see, I did start with a chain 3. I'm going to do 2 double crochets in the 1st double, as usual. 1, 2. Okay. Now, 1 front post double crochet in every double crochet to the 2nd to last double crochet on this side. What she doesn't want you to forget is this double crochet right here. And here's how you do a front post double crochet. You yarn over as usual. Instead of going into the top of the stitch or into a chain space, you are going to go around the post of the stitch. So I'm going to go from the front and I'm going to come behind. I'm going to count that as my stitch. Yarn over and come back and then finish my double crochet as usual. And what that does is it pulls that double crochet up, and if you're looking at it from the right side, it pulls it back. I'm going to do that around every double crochet on this side. So now I've got the 8 in the shell. I kind of bend it over so I can come from behind it. From behind it. And over from behind. And over from behind. You're not doing any chain ones in between. You're just doing front post double crochets around every double crochet on this side. Let me just finish this shell, and then I want to turn it over so I can show you what it looks like. Whoop. I lost my camera.
Oops.
Kim, did you do that?
Yeah, I did it by accident.
That's okay. I forgive you. Can you put it back? Can you change it, Kim? Oh, there it goes. I got it. It did it now.
Okay.
Thank you. Got it. Okay.
Okay.
So when you finish those front posts, double crochets, you're going to get something that looks like this. And when you flip it over, what it does is it pulls the top of those double crochets back like a ridge. If I turn it to the side, you get a nice ridge. And the color kind of pops out underneath it. And you get a really pretty frame around your double crochets. Looks like that. In her picture, it's right here. This is looking from the front because you can see the popcorns. Here were the 8 double crochets of the shell, and then she switched to the orange color here, and the shell color kind of popped through. So she does have lovely pictures in here to guide you along. And you're going to do that all the way across, ending with, you'll end up with a total of 47 double crochets on this side. So if you have the 5 groups of 8 double crochets, that's 40. You had the chain 3 plus 2 more plus this one. So that's 44. When you get to your center, you're going to have, let's see, you're going to be putting 3 double crochets in the center here. So that will be 45, 46, and 47. So that's how it works out. 40 in the shells, 3 in the center, and 4 at the beginning, which is why she tells you don't forget that tip to miss, don't forget this one or your stitch count will be wrong. So that was my goal, was to get us through row 13 today.
Mhm.
And then you have a whole month to do this. And then we're going to pick it up and learn next time. We're going to talk about back post double crochets. And that was just that row is Let me stop sharing here. That row is like half a page long, so I figured that was a good place to start next month. So here's your little to-do list until next month. So then we're going to finish the sequence next month, and we're going to talk about how to either change your colors or work through the other sequences. The last session, we're going to talk about the border and details and finishing it off. So feel free to go ahead if you're comfortable. If you're newer to the process and want to stick with it, then that's all good. You can just stop right there at the end of row 13. We'll pick it up with 14 next time. Well, that was a long class. You guys stuck with me. I'm going to stop recording.